Hello, friends, and welcome to Service of Change's Changecast, your podcast for change. I'm your host, Dennis Nappy II, with Service of Change, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. We have a great show with you tonight. Our guest, Janine Wetter. If you could speak with somebody you love that has passed on, what would you want to say to them? She's putting a book together, asking for your input with your letters and thoughts on that subject. So we're going to speak with her in a little bit. But before I do that, let me get to my partner in crime, my esteemed co-host. I'm going to say it again. The philosopher of Facebook had some really deep stuff up there, quoting Nietzsche this week that I absolutely love what he had to say. Joel, the provocateur Schaefer. Joel, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, Dennis, always a pleasure to be on air with you and to be in your company, period.
I enjoyed as well, Joel. I was feeling drained. I was telling you guys before the show. I obviously I've lost my voice this week, and I'm just tired. My son's been up every night for like the last 5 nights just with the terrible cough, so I'm not sleeping too much. And I'm sitting there tonight going, man, I'm beat. I don't know the show. I'm just tired. And I thought back to our discussion last week, Joel, and I just got all charged up. I'm like, you know what? No matter how crappy I feel, and a couple weeks ago it was just me and Lori that did the show. We walk away from these shows feeling so good about ourselves. I'm patting us on the back right now because I always say it's just so much fun doing it. It's so inspiring to be a part of this Changecast that we have here. So
Yeah, well, it's human connection.
yeah,
And something that might be lacking. I mean, it's not lacking, but I don't know. I could go off on a tangent about that, but
sounds like you need a hug, Joel.
no. But what I'm saying is that I think we engage in a type of human connection that is energizing. So.
Mm-hmm. It is. It certainly is. Hopefully the energy goes to my voice tonight, and it will last throughout the evening. Real quick on a side note, just want to give a shout out to Miss Lori Latimer. She's live on the Twitter handles tonight at Lori Latimer1. She'll also be tweeting to me at Dennis Nappy II, Nappii, and at Service of Change, promoting our show, promoting Service of Change, promoting positive, wonderful things. Lori has been a part of the show pretty much from the beginning, as far as just in the background with Service of Change. She is the author of The Art of Service, a collection of haiku poems. You can get it at serviceofchange.com/bookstore. You want some inspiration that packs a powerful punch in just, I'm going to get the syllables wrong, 17 syllables. Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the book
correct.
for you. Was that right?
Yes.
575.
I know 575. I was like, I'm going to take a guess here with the 17.
You're really good at math, Dennis.
I am good at math.
5 plus
I'm terrible
7
at
plus
math.
5 is 17.
My students.
You're
There you go,
tired.
Joel. I didn't even put that together, literally. My students would laugh at me this year because they'd say, "Hey, mister, I need some help with something." I'd be like, "What subject?" And they'd go, "Math." And I'd yell at them, like, "I'm terrible at math." And by the end of the year, I realized they stopped coming to me with math because I'm just so bad at it. I'm an English teacher by trade, So math's not my strong suit, as I just demonstrated how I just got lucky with that basic math I did. All right. I think I'm losing you guys here. So, Joel, anything pressing or anything you want to discuss briefly before we bring our guest on?
No, the one thing I would say is that, introduce her, but I did something that was pretty similar. I made a song about someone who passed away. I did a hip-hop song about someone who passed away, so.
Oh, that's a great intro, and that's pretty powerful, and let's get into that for just a minute, We've all lost people in our lives, at this stage in the game for us, and it's tough, and I often think, there's so much I still wish I could say, and there are those situations where you don't feel like you got to say everything to those people that have passed on. So, was that therapeutic for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in some way you're getting it out, and hopefully, whatever happens after we pass on, our loved ones, your loved one was able to connect with that message that you put out there. So let me bring our guest on. Let me bring on Janine here. I'm gonna go ahead and read her bio, and then I'm gonna bring her in as I try to jump through my many windows that are already active here. All right, here we go. So Janine Wetter lives in northeastern Pennsylvania with her husband Jim. She's the mother of 3 children and a black Labrador retriever named Ava. Janine has taught English literature at a local high school for over 25 years and counting. She enjoys spending her free time reading and hiking with Ava. And in regards to her book, Forever Yours, have you ever wished you had a chance to tell your deceased loved one just one more thing? This may be your opportunity to express your feelings. I am seeking out individuals who would be interested in writing a letter to a deceased friend, family member, relative, or even foe. My plan is to compile these letters in a book entitled Forever Yours. Join me in saving and sharing your memories through letter writing. And then she has her email address, foreveryours547@gmail.com. That will be linked in our show notes. Without further ado, let me bring on our guest. Janine, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
How are you? So happy to have you on the show with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for inviting me to share my book idea with you.
It's an inspiring idea that, it definitely resonated with me. Like I said, when I came across it, I was working on something completely random, and that popped up, in one of my searches that I was doing, and I said, wow, I got to reach out and talk to her, because I think it's a beautiful project, and it just really, I think, can bring a lot of healing and closure to people on so many levels. So let me ask you, where did this come from? How did this idea come about for you?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm a teacher as well, as my bio told you, and several years ago, actually now over 5 years ago, I was teaching my sophomore English class letter writing, how to write a business letter. These kids are, 15, 16 years old, on the cusp of getting their first summer job.
Right.
And I'm going, you know this as very well, Dennis, being a teacher. You have an agenda, and you plan to get through this agenda. And, I was in full gear telling these kids how I wanted their letter set up and how to type in the format of a business letter. And I'm just rolling right along. And I could see one of my students not really engaged in what I was telling him and telling the class what I wanted. And close to the end of the 42 minutes, the student raised his hand and said, "Do you mind if I write a different kind of letter?" Now, this was after my 40-minute spiel on writing a business letter.
Right.
So I approached his desk and I said, I really don't quite understand where you're coming from. I mean, this is a business letter. Don't you want to apply for your first job at McDonald's? And he said, well, actually, my grandma passed away not too long ago, and I do want to write a letter, but I prefer to write her a letter than a business letter.
Right.
And, I was completely taken aback. This is a modified English class. Some of the kids learning disabilities, and I was just stumped. I didn't even know what to say. I just staring at this young man, and he finally, said, "Do you mind?" And I said, "No, I don't mind. Forget my business letter idea.
Yeah.
Forget applying for your first job." I was
forget the last 40 minutes, basically, right?
Exactly. And I said, I'm so sorry that I missed this completely. And he said, well, I just have one more thing to tell my grandma. And I said, well, I get it. I get it. Write your letter, and we'll worry about the business letter later on. So he submitted the most beautiful letter imaginable to his grandma, and it was from that, and he signed it "Forever Yours." And
wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was my reaction. Oh, wow. And I took a step back and I thought, I've been standing in front of these kids now 25, close to 30 years, and I think so often as teachers we miss it. And I almost missed it with this young man, just following my own agenda and getting my work done, and as if I'm teaching them brain surgery, and this young man really brought me back to reality, and made me take a close look at really all of us. We're all bound together with this one thread. We all have one more thing to say when we've lost someone close to us. And
I'm sorry, it just resonates with me so much on so many levels. Being a teacher myself, a special education teacher, my students always surprise me. And I learned very early on in the classrooms that I've taught in to sometimes you got to let them. They want to be heard, and when they're heard and they can express, classroom management becomes easy.
You better believe it.
Yeah, to make that connection with him and to allow him to express that, and now look what it's turning into, this beautiful project that I really think that this is going to, whether people contribute to this or just somebody picks it up off the shelf somewhere one day or off of Amazon, I think that this project is going to bring people a lot of closure in a lot of different ways, and that's a beautiful thing.
Exactly, and Dennis, when I started this idea, and it was now again 5 years after I had this young man, I tossed this idea around, and I even brought it to my family members, and I thought, am I crazy, or do I have something here? And I decided that not only would I be helping the person who needs to write that last letter, but also our future readers. I think so often when we lose somebody close to us, or maybe not even close, I actually had people submit letters to foes of theirs, true enemies. But I think we all realize that what we are feeling, the emotions we feel when we do lose somebody close to us, is not unique. We all suffer that terrible feeling of loss, and I think it helps sometimes to know that we're not alone, that there are others out there that are feeling that same loss. And just from the letters that I've received, it's amazing how we're so bound together with the same emotion.
And that's an important and a great point there, to find that commonality, because especially when you're going through depression and grief and all the things that come with losing a loved one, you do feel like I'm the only one that's ever possibly feeling this pain, that's ever felt it before. Nobody's ever experienced this. So to have a book where you have a compilation of people with that common thread, I think is a very, very powerful tool, and I look forward to checking it out when it's done. How many submissions do you have so far? How many people do you have that are interested in it?
I started this, and literally through Craigslist. Last summer, I started this project. I launched it the beginning of June of last summer. And the responses have truly been overwhelming. I would say 400 responses from individuals. However, these are responses, not letters. The 400 or 300 plus responses have all been positive, and people wanting to know what they need to do, and did I set up any restrictions, and can they write to a loved one, or does it have to, to be a relative? It's amazing that of those people that responded, I'd say less than half have followed through with writing a letter. And I think the reason for that is the fear of putting those emotions on paper.
Yeah, that's it's that's the other point that I wanted to bring up, is that with grief, at least in Western culture, it's almost like this unspoken thing. Like, I have to be strong. I can't show my emotion. I have to hide it, and I have to bury it and do something to deal with it. But what I learned when my father passed, it was hard, but I stared it right in the face, and I got through it, and I came out, a little bit wiser for it. And so many of us don't want to do that because it hurts. It hurts to accept that, because then we start to question all sorts of things that are tied into, our own existence, and it's hard to do. But I think that we need to have those, that just face and get in touch with those raw emotions, because it's a huge part of the human experience that everybody will go through at some point in their lifetime.
Exactly. And, like I said, and I've responded to individuals with, I know this is not an easy task to
Right.
do.
Mm-hmm.
It is not easy to sit down and write that letter to your dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for us to formulate these ideas in our head, but putting it on paper, as a writer, you face the fear of the blank page. Where do you even begin? And
Right.
it just amazes me that every response I've gotten has been overwhelmingly, this is a beautiful idea, I want to be involved, but then the individual doesn't follow through with sending a letter.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I mean, I'd still say if you've gotten half your responses, that's pretty good.
Oh, it is good.
Statistically. But yeah, it makes you wonder, what's going on with people, when they're expressing that interest, and then only half of them are actually following through with it. But like you said, it's a tough subject to write on.
It
for many
is.
reasons.
It is.
You know.
And like I said, some of these people that have responded to me with a letter, they have not all been directed to loved ones.
Right.
There's a lot of pain in this world, and some of these letters, wow, I'm telling you, it's frightening.
Now, are they? I mean, you said some people responded to foes. So are these letters as if they're still harboring these angry emotions against that foe, or are they kind of coming to peace with it and giving forgiveness, or?
Several letters were actually written to sexual abusers.
Okay.
And I have to say, coming to terms, yes. Two individuals said that in the letter that they have come to terms through therapy with what had happened to them, and just amazing. I mean, just truly amazing.
Wow, you have an incredible. I just can't stop saying this is an incredible project.
Well,
It's really
thank
powerful.
you, thank
Really
you,
powerful.
and I'm hoping that others find it just as uplifting in the end.
So are there then, if somebody's here listening to our Changecast tonight and they say, "Oh, I think I want to contribute," are there restrictions to what you're accepting?
I was afraid to set restrictions.
Right.
Other than telling individuals interested in writing that I do have, as a writer, I do have the privilege of editing or eliminating where I think is necessary. Because, of course, some people, they've sent 5-page letters to me, and I think they start writing and they can't stop themselves.
Can't stop, right.
So some I do have to shorten or at least eliminate some things from the letter without losing, of course, the message. Exactly. Right. But I didn't want to start setting, 200-word limit or, for fear that I would turn individuals away.
Right.
The teacher sometimes comes out in us, and I thought, ooh, I don't want to scare anybody away from my project.
Right, because once they submit it, you can always work with them to help them streamline it.
Exactly. And I've done that. I've sent back now several individuals, and I sent back and said, can you just tighten this up, or maybe if you say this way, and that has worked.
You didn't make corrections in the red teacher pen, did you?
No. I use purple.
Okay, much better. Much less intimidating.
Exactly. I don't want to frighten anybody.
Right, and that's good, because this is a situation where you want, for a lot of reasons, you want people to come into this, to be able to face such a raw, scary thing. Besides just the emotions, it's writing something that's going to be published. That's
exactly.
And shared with the world. Now, are there names going to be? What kind of contact information are you putting for your?
Well, I asked individuals, if they wanted to write their name. Now, many, you'd be surprised, they prefer to stay anonymous. You know,
Right.
some just wrote "Dear Mom" and signed it "Your Daughter,"
Right.
and I get that.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense.
I get that. And again, this is supposed to be for individual writers to come to a closure or find solace in their writing. So whether their name is there or not there is beside the fact.
Right. Right. Wow. What kind of timeline are you looking at? When you want to have these things submitted and have this book published.
Well, I'm hoping that by the time fall comes and goes,
Mhm.
I would like to be done with the collecting of letters,
Right.
so that I could really concentrate on editing and selecting those letters that will make the cut.
Any idea how long this book's going to be?
Um, I'm thinking my goal was to get 100 letters.
Hmm.
And some, unfortunately, I'll probably have to discard. I had individuals submit letters to their animals,
Hmm.
and I'm a dog lover.
Right.
I get that, but I did want to stick with human loss.
Well, you're trying to streamline it for a theme, but what you could do here, I guess this is the writer in me thinking, is save every letter you get, and you may even be able to categorize them for the next book if it's something you want to take
exactly,
on again.
exactly.
And you could do the animal version of it. It's amazing how when you start getting feedback from people, you can have a whole other book just based on some of the things that people send you.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Your Joel, I guess, just mentioned writing a song.
Hmm.
I've had people just submit poetry to me.
Hmm.
That were written to mom, to dad, to grandma, to a friend that committed suicide. And then again, I keep bringing myself to the idea. Well, I did say letter writing.
Right.
A letter writing project. So.
Right.
I certainly will not toss anything away.
Yeah, because again, you can, stockpile it and use it for another project.
Exactly.
Because if this takes off the way I hope it does, like I said, you could get a really good following, and you could even do an annual book,
Right.
If you got people willing to continue to contribute to you. So that's
And it's funny because when I started this project, I was trying to decide, well, how would I set up this book? Do I have like a teen section? Do I have the older adult section
right.
of the book? But I don't think I'm going to categorize within. I mean, I had
Just
several.
random order.
Right. I think so. I think so. I had several young teenagers write, not even students of mine, but just people across the United States.
Hmm.
And I've had elderly write. So I don't think I want to categorize the letters themselves.
I like that idea, because then each page, it's literally what are you going to get on the next page? You don't know
Right.
what's coming. Now, this one student, is his letter going to be in the book?
It's not.
Ah.
I corrected and I gave back and I gave him his letter back.
Right.
And I didn't, unfortunately, save a copy.
Yeah.
And I've lost contact with him now, so.
Maybe through Facebook you could find him.
I thought about it. Maybe I could reach out to him and see if he's interested.
I think that would be a really neat piece, since it's the background.
Right.
To the story.
Right.
It'd be neat to.
Well, the preface of the book will be the story.
That's great.
About this young man.
Yeah, that brings it all together. That really,
Exactly. I do have to give him credit for the idea.
That's great. I love it. Let me jump to Joel and see if he has anything. I know I've been hogging the airwaves, so let me go ahead over to Joel.
When I was getting my MFA at the new school about 13 years ago, I forget what the subject was, but I remember having a kind of insight. But my peers at the time didn't seem to understand my insight. But what I observed was, because we were in the fiction cohort. So there was a nonfiction cohort of the creative writing program, and the fiction cohort, and the poetry cohorts. So we were writing our own stuff, fiction stuff, and then we also had a literature class where we would go over literature. And what I saw from the literature that was chosen, and kind of the more current canon of literature, was that I felt like the books we were reading were accessing the sort of the sacred, so that the people were trying to, the authors were trying to make sense out of reality. They were trying to find what's meaningful out of reality. And I said, this is religious. But I guess maybe when you drop that word religious, people turn you off, or they think you mean something else. But that's my observation, is that I think in our day and age, I think we've kind of ghettoized the different ways of doing things. So you have stuff that's called therapy or therapeutic, or you have literature, or you have religion, and I really think that they're all different ways of dealing with the same thing. So I believe that this project and what it's accessing is something sacred. I feel like there's a sacred element there of, like, what was a letter in past cultures. Now, it's not so much anymore because people use email or text messages more, but it was about distance. So trying to bridge that distance, that physical distance. So a letter to a past loved one is trying to bridge the distance of time. So I really believe it's kind of a spiritual exercise, trying to make meaning of what transpired between those people, and trying to make sense of it. And so therefore I feel like this is a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you.
Hey, Joel, that if I could jump in for a second, that resonated with me, talking about trying to bridge time and the power and the passion that goes into those letters. I remember when I was in Bosnia, writing back to my girlfriend, then fiance at the time. They were such powerful letters, just trying to, almost touch a reality that was so far removed from me when I was overseas. I wish I still had them. They've gotten lost over the years, unfortunately, but that was such a connection. The writing a letter, actually sitting down and putting pen to paper, it's something in it that's different from typing out that email.
Yes.
To sit there and to hold it and to put that time and write it down with your ink. I keep a journal next to my bed, for certain thoughts and things that I'm having, and I refuse to put that content on the computer because there's something personal, something spiritual in that writing piece, writing that actual letter, or writing it pen to paper by hand. So. Well,
it's different. It's different than talking too, because there's a sense that you're committing it to something larger. There's a permanence. I've had many conversations in my life, and most of the time I don't even remember the general tone or substance, much less the actual content. Whereas you write something down, you're committing it to posterity. Now it can be lost, it can be forgotten, but the ancients really believed. When they stumbled on the idea of writing, it was revolutionary to our culture. It has so much power to be able to transfer information. Yeah, to transfer information from generation to generation. Before, they relied on the oral tradition. Right. Whisper down the lane, things are forgotten. You write something down, that they believed that was magic. To them, it was magic. We take it for granted, but to them, it was like, well, this is how you plant these seeds, and this is how you build this. And these are survival skills, which would make the difference between whether their little tribe, died or lived. And so to be able to write it down, and then you move into the moral sphere, and then you start to write down moral directives involving, what makes a meaningful life, and then it takes on even more of a dimension.
And Janine, I think about, with my books, this project will live on beyond us. When we're long gone, somebody can pick this up 100 years from now with the digital age, with writing, 200-300 years, who knows, But I always think about my book like, what if the worst case? I love disaster movies. What if a disaster movie scenario happened, and my book just happened to be in the right corner of my house where it survived? And then 1,000 years from now, somebody's digging through the rubble here, and they come across my book. That's a glimpse into my head, my outlook, my perspective of the world, and I think your project is something that just can really teach people in the future about the human psyche and the human experience in this day and age. It's great.
And getting back to what Joel said, that permanence of letter writing, I mean, that's I think that's the fear that people have, though, and why they're not following through with sending me a letter.
Because it's permanent.
It's that permanence, and putting that raw emotion on paper is a task.
So what advice, I'm sorry to cut you off, what advice do you have for the person that wants to write but is afraid for that reason, or for any reason? What words of encouragement would you offer them?
Pretty much just what I've said to you, that, in the long run, I think you'll find comfort in getting those emotions out in front of you. There's a sense of closure, a sense of comfort, reading your words on that white paper and coming to terms with the loss that you felt. And, although some people will follow through and do that, write that letter, there's so many that haven't, and it's sad.
It really, because it's a tool that's available to us, and some people say, well, I'm not a good writer, and some people are ashamed because they can't spell very well. I've had people tell me, I want to do something, but I'm not good at spelling. I tell them all the time, so what? You can get better, or I'm not going to make fun of you. I'm a teacher, And so I've seen some horrendous spellings, but we have spell check now. It's a tool that you can use. If you're a bad speller, and you don't, some people, they say, I'm too old to relearn. I have no interest in learning to spell. Okay, fine. Use your spell check. There's no shame in that.
Right.
Or ask somebody to
write a letter. I mean, I've had people literally write the letter. I have a PO box, just for the person that doesn't want to use the computer.
Right.
I've welcomed handwritten letters. I mean, I think that's even more beautiful.
Yeah. That's powerful too.
It is. And just to physically put it in an envelope and put the address, I mean, that is truly what we know, my generation knows as letter writing.
Yes.
Not turning on the silver box in front of you.
And getting an instant response to it.
Exactly.
I remember waiting weeks to hear back from people.
Oh my gosh.
And back to, facing that fear and dealing with that. I mean, I guess I've been a writer my whole life, and I've used it to help me understand things and to help me face certain fears that I've had. I'm a very emotional guy, and when I was younger or throughout my life, if I've had some kind of issue, emotional problem with a friend, a loved one, I would write them a letter, and sometimes it'd be like a 10 to 15 page letter, and I'd edit it, and I'd read it, and I'd read it, and I'd read it, and what I realized by the time I was done, I understood how I felt 1,000 times better, and I was prepared to speak with them. I didn't need to even give them that letter because I would write the letter because I was afraid to talk to them. And then I'd write it out, and I felt so prepared, and I felt like a weight was lifted off my chest. I went through this when I wrote my first book, Service. There's a section in there about the loss of my grandfather, and another section about the loss of my supervisor when I was a police officer. And as I wrote those parts, I had such a sense of healing because I had to examine what I felt and what I was still feeling in the moments in order to articulate it to the people that were going to be reading my book. And I walked away feeling so much lighter because I understood the grief. I understood why I felt sad because I was able to reflect on what those people meant to me.
Thank you. Exactly.
So
you get more insight. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead. I'm rambling tonight.
There's just no doubt, in my experience, just no doubt that writing gives people more insight, especially when it's emotional, when there's emotional issues. I think there's a tendency in modern culture to default to the conscious mind.
Right.
But so people think if they ignore something, it'll go away.
Yep.
But reality is that it really just goes to your subconscious, and then you dream about it. And it can. I've seen it poison people. I've seen people. They feel like if they ignore something, it'll go away, and instead it just manifests itself in other ways.
Exactly.
Such a common problem. Right.
Yeah. So writing about it is discovery. It's self-discovery. and it accesses that subconscious. Me and Dennis, me and you have talked about this a lot, like Carl Jung
Mm-hmm.
and the archetypes,
Mm-hmm.
and we poo-poo as modern people. We poo-poo a lot of the stuff. And the modern psychology has kind of desacralized it and made it something that is only to be done like in a psychiatry or psychology office. And I don't buy that. I mean, obviously, if you have serious issues, it does pay to consult people that are trained professionals, but it's not that only happens there.
Right.
What they know about human nature is universal in the sense that when you write things down, you're going to discover, you're going to outlet those emotions. I mean, my whole journey of you know recovering from trauma in my past has involved like being able to see things, and also with the help of other people, but being able to see things in new lights and realizing that so much of what I perceived, that I had built up all these illusions, and often to protect myself, but there was just so much stuff that just wasn't true. It had a kernel of truth, but then I wrote it down, and it was so freeing, but I was afraid of it. I was afraid of it. I was afraid to face those demons, but they weren't really demons.
Right.
They were just natural parts of the human experience.
Right.
You know, I can't stress enough, we talk about, making those small changes and how we need to kind of look within. We've said this a lot on our show, Joel. You need to take that time to start looking within yourself and understanding your own thoughts and feelings, emotions, and writing, I think, is a great way to do that. And even if you're not confident in your writing, like I said, get a journal and just put your own thoughts that you're not going to show anybody. Put a little lock on it, like Lori used to have, that we used to sneak and read when we were kids. Ha ha, Lori. But put a little lock on it, and just write your own thoughts down, and you're going to find you get better at writing. It gets easier, and you're going to start to understand things even more. So Janine, let me ask you, do you push writing heavily, in your classes?
Oh, I do. I do. Everything we do is with writing.
What's your favorite, type of writing assignment to give your students?
Oh my gosh. You name it. I mean, I have them writing poetry. I have them, writing just narratives. We follow a structured writing program where I teach. It's called Collins Writing Workshop. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I'm not, no.
It's interesting. We give the students 3 areas that we're going to focus on. 3 areas where we want to see improvement. So instead of correcting, like you said, with the red pen, every spelling mistake, if spelling isn't one of the areas we're focusing on this particular writing assignment, then every word could be misspelled.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're focusing on just sentence variety.
Right.
So it kind of takes the pressure off the student in correcting every possible area.
Right, absolutely. That's kind of how I approach my grading, in a tiered system. Like in the beginning of the year,
right.
I just look at, did you follow instructions and include all the required elements, your name,
Right.
your date, your heading, skip a line, and give me 3 sentences. That's, and that's all I grade for in the beginning of the year. And then I build off of that as the year goes on. Some days it's spelling, some days it's punctuation, structure, all these different
Right.
formats for them. That is helpful. It's a confidence builder for the kids.
It is a confidence builder, and it's looking for the positive instead of always for the negative.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
And you find that, at the beginning of the year, everybody's usually timid to write. At least this is my experience. Nobody wants to write, and nobody wants to share what they wrote. And by the end of the year, I got to dedicate 2 classes for one writing assignment because everybody wants to share what they wrote. Everybody wants to be involved because they got such a confidence in what they're writing and such a pride because they've grown over the year.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. If we could get everyone to not fear the white paper, that's a great accomplishment.
Well, I think what you're doing is going to contribute to that in helping people to get a little bit more comfortable.
I hope so.
With the writing process. So let's get close to wrapping up our show here. Is there any final thoughts that you have? Do you have anything else that you want to add, or?
No, I just hope people jump on board and send me their letters.
And how can they reach you?
They could use my email address, foreveryours547@gmail.com.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
they could
And then,
also,
I'm sorry. Go
they,
ahead.
again, if they prefer to handwrite a letter, they could mail to Forever Yours, P.O. Box 456, Dunmore, Pennsylvania, DUNMORE, PA 18512.
Great, and we'll have that linked up in the show notes too. Once it's out there
Great.
at servicetochange.com, we'll have all that contact information. I know you also have a YouTube video commercial that talks about this a little bit too, and might be. I know you and I talked before the show. There might be a Facebook group in the near future for people that are interested in this
Yes.
as well. Okay,
Yes.
everybody connects through Facebook nowadays, so.
I know. See, I have to get savvy in my social networking.
It's a learning process, and you never learn it all. So one step at a time has always been,
Right.
my method. Starting with one thing, and within a year, you've got all these different accounts that you have to keep straight in your head. So, but I think you're on the right track. Like I said, anything you need, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd like to to work with you on this project any way I can
Great.
support you. This is
Thank
a
you.
fantastic idea. So Joel, let me turn it over to you. Any final thoughts on your end?
I was going to ask if it was okay with you, I could recite my poem the first verse of the song that I made. It'd only take like 60 seconds.
Absolutely. Now, do
Great.
you need me to beatbox or?
You'd have to do 93 BPMs. So unless you can beatbox,
Hey, I'm pretty good, man.
unless you have it calibrated you can calibrate it along a BPM scale. It'll throw me off.
I could probably cough that fast right now. All right, let me let you have your sound of mind and go ahead. I'll be quiet, Joe. Let's hear this.
Okay.
You left, you're dead, nothing left what was said, echoing, fading, spread through my head. My wish is that your breath infinite as it lifts, the wind, the breeze, it spins me simply. You'll never be seen by me or anyone else in the flesh, and I can't wrap my head around there being a mist where we'll live when we're dead, but there was a fire in your chest, your body cold when it left. If time's an illusion, can't stress the seconds next, the minutes cleft into eternal portions. Feel our years were just crumbs, flimsy morsels. I'm still hungry, can't ever be fed, because the food I need is your body's memories, tease me, fiend for something more solidly composed. Their promises, mockeries. You in white robes on top of clouds, obviously a metaphor. I told you died doing dope. I should have said it with more passion, but you were already gone. I watched you passing.
Wow.
Joe, you're talented, man. That was good.
Thank you.
Wow.
What was it? Crumbs. I'm still hungry.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm.
oof.
Well, let me
was
share
good.
this because it's like where my headspace was as I was beginning to do it, and as I was doing it was I was uncomfortable doing that.
Right.
Tonight,
Just as the people who
As the people are writing.
yeah, but at the same time, I mean, and I've done it before. It's out there, but just saying it out loud again, and then sharing that moment with you two.
Right.
I mean, there's some solace. There's some.
Yeah.
There's something that was I can't quite put it into words because I'm emotional right now, but there was some positive channeling of those emotions through that process of sharing that.
Yeah.
With you.
And we got something out of that too, and I have a connection with you through that. I remember there's been a few times where I've read excerpts from my book, on the air, and I never admitted it on the air, but I was real nervous reading it, and I felt awkward and scared, and reading through my work, even though it's published and it's out there, and I talk about it regularly. There's something to it. It is scary, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it.
Right.
So thank you for taking the time to share that, Joel.
Thank you for allowing me to.
So, okay. Anybody else have Jeannie? Anything else? We're gonna go ahead and wrap up
but
the
feel
show.
free to send me letters, gentlemen.
Absolutely. I'm strongly considering it. I've been
Okay.
thinking about this since we first connected. So
Great.
we'll talk. Why don't you go ahead and stay on the line? We're going to go ahead and close out the show, and then we can touch base after the show.
Okay. All right. Great.
All right. And Miss Lori, let me give you an opportunity. If there's anything you want to say before we sign off.
Just that I think, I don't know, this I'm excited to see what the final product looks like. It keeps reminding me of my work, as a social worker when we help people process loss. One of the first things you do is suggest well, why don't you write a letter? And it's and like you all are talking about, it's really hard for people, and they get nervous just at the idea sometimes.
Right.
But once it's done, some people, they hold on to it forever. So I think, yeah, it's just it's a great idea. So I'm
That could be
looking
a great
forward
book to
to it.
keep in your office, Lori.
Mhm.
In all seriousness,
Yeah.
here, check this out. Here's what other people have done, and
Right.
Other people have done it. See, they did it. They got through it.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks, Lori. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay, well, again, I want to say thank you to our guest Janine, who's writing, Forever Yours. Her contact information will be up at theservicechange.com show notes regarding this Changecast. Joel and Lori, thank you as always for our support, for your support in the show, and to our listeners out there, we greatly appreciate it. Please continue to share our stuff. Check us out. Listen to us 24/7, to our archive shows, to our new shows. We've got the Secret Podcast every morning that I'm doing Monday through Friday, talking about things paranormal in support of my new writing project, I Am Human. Food for the Archons, Book 2 from I Am Human and We Are Not Who We Think We Are. Serviceatchange.com/radio. You can listen 24/7 once you get our free mobile app. So I ask that you check that out, and please continue to like and share our stuff. That's all the time we have this evening. Again, a big thank you to everybody. I'm Dennis Nappy II with Service to Change, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. I encourage you to be that change. Thank you.